Please join us every week for a new episode of Understanding the Human Condition with Dr. James Flowers. Dr. Flowers and his most admired mentors, respected colleagues, and VIP guests will share valuable insight into underlying health causes, conditions, and issues. These in-depth yet approachable episodes are a great resource for both private individuals and industry professionals. Our esteemed host, Dr. James Flowers, is one of the most recognized and respected names in the field of chronic pain, mental health, and substance use disorders, both nationally and internationally. Dr. Flowers is the founder of J. Flowers Health Institute, located in Houston, Texas. For more information about J. Flowers Health Institute and its concierge services, go to jflowershealth.com or dial 713-783-6655. And be sure to mention this podcast.
Welcome to Understanding the Human Condition with our host, Dr. James Flowers.
I'm so excited today.
I know.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a great day.
Thank you for joining us, Debra. Our VIP guest is Debra Valentino, and she is the recovery coach for Yukwatsistay.
Yukwatsistay.
There you go. Okay. So I'd like to introduce you by reading a little bio about you, and then we can get started on some good conversation.
I'm just going to interrupt and say Yukwatsistay. Say it one more time.
Yukwatsistay.
Oh, there you go. Means our fire, our spirit within each one of us, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. So Debra Valentino is an enrolled member of the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin and descendant of the Menominee Tribe of Wisconsin, mother of 4 daughters, 1 son, and several children born of her heart. Grandmother of 6, 2 grandsons, and 4 granddaughters. Married over 44 years to her husband, Kermit Valentino. Debra has 35 years in recovery from alcohol and drugs and has always promoted healing and supporting others to reconnect with their own fire for a clean and balanced life to find the good road to recovery.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, welcome.
We've been looking forward to this.
What's the weather where you are right now, by the way?
Oy.
I think it's about 20 below with the wind chill.
Oh my God.
My goodness.
I can't even remember what that was
I know.
like.
That's right. Wow.
So,
thank you so much for coming to Zoom with us today. We've been looking forward to this so much. Opioid struggle is a personal passion of mine and my life, and it's been my work now for about 30 years and my area of expertise. And as opioid struggle, or as opiates really related to people who had long-term chronic pain issues and comorbid addiction as well, which is a little bit different, I think, in your world. But the opioid struggle in Indian country is a topic that needs more attention, which is why we're here today. Mm-hmm. Can you share with the audience a little bit about the story you shared with Robin over the weekend about the young man in your class that lost his struggle with the opioids and how that sparked your passion?
Well, my husband and I moved back to the reservation when he retired. And so that was about 4 years ago now.
Okay.
And my thing was always wanting to get back into the culture. I mean, I did a lot of research on my own living in Chicago, but I was away from the reservation, the Oneida Reservation. And so when I came back, I put myself in language class and culture and history. And that was a big part of that was every day.
Yeah.
It's a real commitment.
Yeah.
And there was a young man that was in our class who basically, oh my gosh, I didn't even think he was that old. He just looked young. He was just smiling all the time, just a happy person. And I had no idea that he was struggling with this addiction. So anyway, what happened was I didn't see him. He didn't come to class for a few times, and found out that he kind of got in a little bit of trouble. And I basically told one of the fellow students that, we all do things, and just tell him to come back. And within a week, he OD'd. He overdosed. Yeah. And he died. And unfortunately, yes, the person that, found to give him the drugs is is also, sent away. And so it's not a good thing.
No.
Either way, you lose a life. The person that's giving them these things, also loses their life by going to prison.
Right.
Yeah. Was a friend, right?
So that's kind of what sparked it for me, but it also sparked a huge concern for the community because this was not the first one. And so basically people said enough is enough.
Right.
And then generated several meetings in our community at different times. And the one I went to was, of course, here in Oneida. And we were just talking about what can we do. And so that's kind of what sparked me to get interested. My husband and I, of course, did a lot of this work in the Chicago area for the Native American community and ran meetings. And, that's where we sobered up and sobered up together.
Yeah.
January 5th of 1986.
Wow. Congrats.
And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're very open about your own struggle and your own recovery. Would you mind sharing with the audience a little bit about your own story and your sobriety?
Yeah, I guess started at an early age. I mean, not as early as some, but 16, drinking and then dabbling into different drugs. And, basically, it was just not a good thing. There is that addiction and alcoholism in my family. So, and I grew up saying same thing like a lot of people, I'm not going to do that when I get older.
Right.
And, just didn't happen. So, basically, I just started drinking and, like I said, it wasn't good. And, my life wasn't manageable, as they say.
Yeah.
And met my husband right after high school. I was 18, he was 21. And, we proceeded to, of course, party together. And then we started to have children. And, that's the whole thing. We often talked throughout those early years of how do we stop this?
Mm-hmm.
How do we stop this cycle? And as much as we promised, we weren't going to drink or we weren't going to drug again or do any of these things, it didn't work out that way.
Right. And if it could happen to you, it could happen to anybody.
Right.
Yep. And I have an older brother who basically was in recovery before us, I think about, I'm going to say almost 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked for him after high school. And he had a basement waterproofing business, and I worked for him. And my husband, actually, that's how I met him. He came and interviewed for a job there.
Wow.
And, so anyway, long story short, we both, my brother would often say, "Are you guys ready yet? Are you guys ready?" So that kind of thing.
Sure.
And after both our parents died of either alcoholism related issues, and 3 of them on holidays. My father was killed on Mother's Day, and his father died of alcoholic heart disease on Christmas Eve. And his mother passed away on Halloween. And then my mother, she committed suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Although there's, for me anyway, there's speculation with that. But anyway,
yeah,
doesn't change anything. So it was just those types of things, and I just kept, and life was not manageable at all. And I just kept thinking, I'd be on the bus and in Chicago, because at the time we didn't have a car. And I was toting all these kids around, with me on a bus. But I would be always praying to myself, like, how do I get out of this?
Mm-hmm.
How do we create a better life for our kids?
Mm-hmm.
And when his dad passed away on Christmas Eve, that was 1985. And I don't know exactly how that all worked, but we buried him. My husband said he wasn't going to drink anymore. He was pretty much, the whole funeral and everything, because we had one in Chicago, and then we had to bring him home to Oneida, and we had the funeral up here.
Mm-hmm.
And said we weren't going to drink anymore.
Yeah.
New Year's came along, and I think the next day we were drinking, and but something happened, and then and my brother was a big, support, and he took us to our first meeting.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
And I actually went to that meeting in support of my husband, because I was thinking he's the alcoholic.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, of course.
The worst one.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's kind of how we got started. And when I went to that first meeting, I think we were pretty fortunate. It was a meeting in Chicago that was mostly of Native elders. There was a lot of older people in that meeting, and they were Native. And they just were laughing and making us feel comfortable. And when I walked out of that meeting the first time, I said, I need to keep coming.
Yeah.
It wasn't for him, it was for me.
Wow.
So for me to get that right away, that was pretty amazing. And my husband and I, we also knew early on we had to run our own programs.
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of times, and we joked about it and laughed about it a lot of times, because it was like, well, you wake up from drinking and drugging and partying together and looking at each other like, who are you?
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And couples don't make it.
Right.
Yeah.
We were very fortunate to make it.
Yeah. That's an amazing
That was
story.
that was 44 years. And like I said, unfortunately, he passed away this last October from the COVID.
We're so sorry about that. An amazing 44 years, I hope. It sounds like it was.
Yes, it was. And that's probably what I hold on to.
Absolutely. And the resiliency that you have is amazing. Talk to us just a little bit about, not specifically about the Native American community in general, but maybe, or if you want to, that'd be great, but the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin and substance use disorder, in particular opiate disorder. And is it how do you see that? Is it a huge problem in your community? Is it something that do you see as nationwide?
Well, it's nationwide.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe, it's like not just Native communities, but it is nationwide. It's worldwide.
Yeah.
But the thing with our community is that we, SAMHSA, what did I say? Substance and health abuse.
Right.
They basically have had pockets of money for different Native tribal nations to kind of help them combat this.
Great.
And so the tribal action plan here, that's kind of like when we got started again, when I told you earlier about the story about how I got kind of involved in all of this, we started to meet. And we started to meet with the tribal action plan, behavioral health, the OPD, which is the police department here, and just interested community members, and just kind of talking about, what can we do? The first thing was to create the awareness. Because when I came, like I said, 4 years ago, I had no idea how prevalent this was on the Oneida Reservation and surrounding areas. Excuse me. So the overdoses that were happening, you come from Chicago and you move here, and I live pretty much in, like, it's my backyard's woods and, everything. And Chicago, you hear ambulances and everything all the time, but not used to that here.
Sure.
And it got to be, I noticed that there was a lot going by the house off and on, sometimes 2 and 3 times a day. And I'm sure it was other issues, but the growing effects of the drug abuse and the alcohol and different things that were happening was contributing to that.
Sure.
So, we had to create awareness.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we began to do was, when we met as a community, first of all, was to talk about what can we do. And one of the things that came up was to have a sacred fire. And that sacred fire was to create awareness.
Yeah.
And so we did that October of 2017, I believe. And that fire ran 24/7 for over 100 days.
Wow.
Wow.
And so we had to have, we had very steady fire keepers, and the men are usually the fire keepers in that aspect. And then I probably cooked breakfast every morning for them.
Wow.
And then also attended the fires, and we were there just supportive. We always tried to keep like 2 to 4 people at the fire at all times. so that any time somebody would come in who needed help, because it wasn't just to create awareness, it was also if anybody was looking for help, they could come to that fire, put their tobacco in the fire, say their prayers, and ask for help. There was also we had I don't know, I could not even tell you how many people in those 100 days that came through that were looking for help, that were looking to support us with food, firewood, in any way that they could. There were people that came because they now were becoming aware, stop and ask, what were we doing there? Day in and day out. I mean, even people from all four directions, the United States.
Yeah.
We had people from other Native communities. I think we even had, and I wasn't there that time, but I think they said a monk came in and even said his prayers at the fire.
Yeah.
So there was just a tremendous amount of support for what we were doing, and it got hard sometimes, but we kept it going.
I can imagine. And that must be part of that avenue of opening up that you talk about a little bit, right? It has to be the right avenue to open up, to be able to take that step into recovery. And that fire kind of provided that avenue. But can you expand on that avenue that you were talking to Robin about a little bit about? It was, let me find it real quick.
Yeah. So the fires, just so that I can understand it and the audience can understand it. So the the fires are to raise awareness, correct?
Well, the sacred fire was,
that's for any awareness,
you can use
right?
that for anything, any ceremonial.
Yeah.
It means, hey, we've got a problem here, right?
Yeah. But we wanted to create, and other nations were doing the same thing. They wanted to create that awareness in their communities. Hey, we have a problem. And so if they came to the fire, we would explain what it was for and, different things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So we actually were only going to do it for 30 days. But we didn't feel that it created enough awareness. So that's why we kept going. And so, because we just had like tons of people coming every day just to sit by the fire.
Right.
There's different people, like there was a couple that would drive by and see us all the time. That couple then decided one morning, let's stop and see what they're doing, because actually, they were looking for some help. And they thought, well, maybe let's see what this is about. So, and this opioid issue and everything, this touches not just young people. This touches older people, everything.
It sure does.
So when they got by the fire, basically, they were coming back all the time because they didn't feel the need to go get anything because they felt the fire was working for them.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of different stories like that we had there.
You guys are living, breathing. Billboards for It Takes a Village, right?
Yep.
Yes, and people that were in there were people like myself. We're all in recovery.
Yeah.
All volunteer.
All volunteer, and we've been volunteering for the past going on 4 years almost. Just because it's, we understand what it is. We wanted to also create that awareness of how do you look at addiction? It's not like you can just, because a lot of families don't know how to deal with it, because it touches, it's not just the addict, it touches the whole family.
Oh, yeah.
And, people are like, well, why can't you just quit?
Right.
And it's, it's not that easy. It's just like anything else, it's a disease, and it's basically, like diabetes.
That's right.
Yeah.
You have to get help for it. You have to change your lifestyle, and you have to do all these things.
And there's no shame.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let's talk about your volunteers for a second. Tell us about your volunteers and what you look for in a volunteer. And I know you're very proud of the volunteers that work with you.
Well, the volunteers that we've been working with, well, my husband was a big part of it. And myself, I have 2 daughters that were also involved, and their boyfriends, and now husband, because we did have a couple weddings, and
nice.
At the sober gathering place, it became a place for social functions too.
Oh,
Right.
That's awesome.
Like
Celebration.
we had a couple weddings. And let's see, we had just community members. So there was myself, Kermit, Francine, Cassandra, Frank, Gina, Dana, oh my God, Josiah, Anita. I mean, you know, we just, I'm trying to think of, I don't want to, I forgot, I'm forgetting one name. That's not good.
That is okay. They're all important.
Yeah.
Yes,
If
but
someone-
they,
Go ahead.
they're, you know, I mean, they've all been there, and I used to have a schedule, you know, so
Yep.
they'd all have to give me if they were going out of town, if they were doing this or whatever, and I have to create that schedule every week so that somebody was there. We tried to have two, like I said, 2 people to 4 people all the time at the fire. And then when we actually got a space in 2018, we tried to do the same thing, because if a man comes in, you got to have men there. If a woman comes in, you got to have women there.
Right.
So we always try to, you know, cover those important things as well.
Yeah, sure.
Share with the audience the story that you had shared with me over the weekend about her little girl came home when she was young, and she told her mom, she told Deborah, they called me Indian, Mom.
Well,
And I was
you know,
like,
I mean, the whole thing with loss of identity, you know, for Native people. And I know there's a lot of people who might say, oh, just get over it. You know, this happened a long time ago. Well, yes, these things happened a long time ago, but like the residential schooling, where children were taken away from 6 to 16 for months at a time, you know, and some of them never went home. And to go through all the, and I'm just mentioning this because this is kind of what has been leading up to, you know, with our communities of generational trauma.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And so, you know, the residential schools, like I said, the loss of land, and it continues, you know, with foster care. You know, so anyway.
Can I ask you a quick question? Are you saying that they take children out of the nation to put them in foster care in the general community, or?
Well, there's the Indian child welfare law that is supposed to be followed.
Yeah.
That's another thing I kind of was involved with Chicago. We actually had the state of Illinois where they had to step up, because in Chicago they were not practicing that. They were not abiding by that. There was no Indian child welfare office. There was nobody they were contacting. When they take a child that's Native, they're supposed to contact that tribe or that nation and follow those guidelines.
Sure.
So we also started that in Chicago, and so they still have an office there now.
Good.
But yes, they would take children, and they, you know, they would be in non-Native homes. Sometimes they'd go to another state. Sometimes they'd go to another country.
Wow.
And never know who they were.
Yeah.
So the loss of identity is huge.
Yeah.
For myself, growing up in Chicago,
Right.
I was just in a melting pot. And at the same time, there were, you know, Polish, and there was, you know, Black, and there was Hispanic and Asian. And I was the only one most of the time. And so it was like, okay, where do I fit in to all of this? So I grew up with a lot of that. And the story with my daughter was the fact that, you know, here I am, you know, like my husband and I now are sober, we're doing what we need to do, you know. And my children are, you know, my oldest was probably in 2nd grade maybe. And then the next one started in kindergarten. And I think that was the time she came home. And she was like, Mom, they're calling us Indians. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you are Indian. What am I not doing that you don't know that?
Exactly.
So, you know, I started to, you know, my husband, he pretty much grew up in the Native community. I didn't really find that community until I was 18. And the American Indian Center in Chicago is one of the oldest Indian centers throughout Indian country. And they're still in existence. I really can't even, I'm trying to think of how long. It might be 60 years. I'm not sure right now. They did have to move, but where it was, that's how I got involved and started to take my children there and started to reach out to people. And I even sold their own regalia so that they could dance at different powwows and social functions and at the Indian Center when we'd have fundraisers or they'd have their own events there. And just getting to know people and doing my own research. I would come back, I knew my mother brought us home here once in a while. So, I knew of, Oneida and Menominee Nation and where it was, but I started to do my own research and reach out. And I even reached out and started, we started another organization in Chicago, me and my husband and 2 other people. And I did some classes, just beginning classes with language, just the words. I'm not a fluent speaker. I wish I could be. It's a very hard language.
Yeah.
Not as hard as Navajo, but it is hard.
Yeah, sure.
But, and I'm still trying, as old as I am, I'm still trying to pick it up. But that was the thing. When she came home and said that, my thing was, okay, I need to change this because this cannot be repeated. And,
right.
So from learning, I went back to school. I went to a Native college in Chicago for a while, and I did learn about all of those things, about the losses that Native people, all those things that happened to us way back when, but I did not want to stay there. I got angry at first, but I didn't want to stay there and pass that on to my kids.
Right.
I wanted them to learn about it, to make them strong enough so that they can make better decisions for themselves and look at solutions, not be a victim, and move on and they have a good life. So I think we did pretty good.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
So what can the audience do to help support your cause? Because you used to have fundraisers, but because of COVID, you can't do that now, right? So.
Yeah, we had some help from the Oneida Nation itself with small grants. And then we basically really didn't want to tie ourselves. We were a grassroots organization. When like these things I've talked about happen, to people, the trust is a big issue.
Yeah.
So a lot of people didn't want to get tied into big grants where they told us what to do. We said, we're just going to do what we want to do. So a lot of it was basically local fundraising. And I had ties in Chicago, like I said, so I had good people that donated and gave to us, sent us checks and things like that.
Good.
But we did a lot of, just fundraisers. We'd sell like food, and we'd have raffles, and we had once a year events where we thanked the community, Appreciation Day, for all the support they gave us.
Oh.
And so we just
That's
continued
awesome.
like that. We did, I spoke here and there at different places that people wanted me to come tell us who we were, and they would give us a donation. We worked with various groups, and if we participated, sometimes they would divvy up the money for those that participated.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of little things like that. And then when COVID hit, we couldn't do it anymore, but we did have enough money. And the thing is, the office, other than paying for the utilities, and the nation gave us the office we didn't have to pay any rent.
Oh.
It was like this huge garage,
Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
and it was a good place because it was big, because whoever had it before had the garage for their antique cars. So it was this. And so we just painted the whole place, made it homey. We wanted to make it relaxing where people could come and just sit and watch TV, have a meal, go to a meeting. And over the years, we added beadwork and art classes and different things for people to come to.
Nice.
Every other Sunday, we had somebody come and speak on their addiction, share their story.
Love it.
So we did a lot of different things. We connected with behavioral health, so that if somebody came on a Friday, because things aren't open past
Sure.
Right.
the business day and then the weekend.
Yeah.
And we weren't a facility to be able to house people, but what we would do is we just didn't close.
Yep.
And we stayed awake.
Yeah.
And we took turns until we could get that person in on a Monday to see somebody. And then, so that's kind of what the initial thing the community was asking for.
Yep.
Where can people go to
Mm-hmm.
to get help, to have a meal, to just sit? We had a
Mhm.
pool table. We just,
Yeah.
whatever we thought of,
Place where
the
they could
guys
come.
would say, hey, let's jump on
Love it.
this, internet and see what's out there and,
Yeah.
what's free,
Sure.
So we got a free pool table, and, one of our guys was an artist as far as like woodwork and doing all this stuff. He did artwork on the side of the pool table for our nation and stuff like that. So
Amazing.
it was a lot of just commitment, personal relationships, and just, for what people were committed to. We had that strong, what's the word I'm looking for? Passion
Passion.
for
Yeah.
what we were doing, for what we were doing.
You bet.
And so
Speaking
we continued our fires there too. So
yeah, speaking of fundraising, do you know that for you as a nonprofit, you can walk into any Walmart. You can go to 10 different Walmarts and walk in with your 501c3 paperwork and tell them what you're doing. And the general manager of that Walmart has the authority to write $1,100 checks to any 501c3 that he wants to.
Seriously?
He or she wants to. And they can do it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and you can do it up to twice a year. So, and they don't advertise it, they don't talk about it, but you can go to a general manager at a Walmart and ask for $1,100 donation for your 501c3. And if he likes you or she likes you, which they will, they'll give you $1,100 on the spot. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I
That's
will.
awesome.
I mean, like I said, we just had to pay the utilities and things like that. So that's pretty much, we covered that most of the time. And then we still had enough money to carry us through kind of the whole COVID thing up until I closed the office December. Well, we closed. We closed the office December 31st. And so we still have enough to keep the account open. And then we were just saying, we're just going to continue once things happen. We'll just continue to start fundraisers. And our initial goal now is to continue to work with behavioral health. We have another group called Wise Women here who do a lot of things for homeless and different people. And so we're just going to fundraise, and what we're going to do, because we don't have a space and don't have those added things to pay for, we're just going to decide as a group, who do we want this to go to?
Right.
Who's dealing with addiction? Is it, like behavioral health, they're looking to take over a spot to somewhat have what we had.
Right.
So they're going to have a sober gathering place or some place for people to connect with and go. Presently, we still do Friday night fires.
Yeah.
And we continued that. We did stop for a little bit, but because it's outside and it's around a fire, we didn't have a lot of people coming. So we were pretty safe, masking, and then things like that. So
Right.
and we continue to do that today yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Could you give us a couple of, or even one success story of someone that's been touched by your work in the community that has turned out to be a success? I'm sure you have many, 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 but successes.
And the successes can be, because as recovery coaches, because we took recovery coach training, and most of us, and one of the things I think that it teaches you is that we don't tell them what they recover from.
Right.
So if they think that their drinking ain't that bad, but as long as they stay away from heroin or, different things like that, synthetic opioids and whatever, then, we just try to get them to where they need to be. And then if they think about the other later, they think about that.
Yeah.
But we did have, I feel like we've had quite a few successes. One that always comes to mind is a young lady, and she pretty much started off, coming early on up by the fire that we had for 100 days. And she decided she wanted to go back to school. So she went back to school, and she decided she was going to go back for nursing.
Wow.
And she started taking classes, and she was always coming up there, and she'd let us know, well, I got to go home this time because I got to work on this, but she always wanted to be around the fire. Well, one day she came in, she says, I'm so nervous. I got to do a presentation in my class. And so my husband was sitting there, and he says, well, do it. And so we're in this teepee up on a hill, and around a fire, and she had it in her car, so she goes and gets it, and she displays it up there, and she proceeded to do her presentation. And she did it to, I think some other people showed up. So she did it like 2 or 3 times, and she was ready to do it at school.
Wow.
Aww.
That's amazing. That's fantastic. Yeah.
Did you?
That's
Yeah.
great.
Well,
So there's just different things like that.
You bet. Is there anything else you would like to tell us about the work that you do and that you'd like the audience to know?
Ooh. Basically, I guess what I would like people to understand is just, oh my gosh, you just kind of threw me with that question.
I know.
But I guess just really understanding, there's a lot of things I think that, in my perspective, coming from a native, as a Native person, there's a lot of things that Native people have went through.
Yeah.
And, I think it's important for you to, like maybe start doing your own little research and coming up with those things. Because if you look at all of the, because I was just kind of looking at some of the things, throughout my lifetime and everything, and just looking at the different things that happened. Like if you would Google massacres, what happened, there's over 200 to 300.
Yeah.
So all these things that have led up that I talked about for trauma for Native people, and we are still in some of that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
The Indian child welfare stuff is still happening.
Yeah.
But to really just kind of take some time, do a little research. I love when shows actually do and listen to what we have to say.
Yeah.
I wish talk show hosts would do that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And not just with the bad stuff, with the good stuff.
Sure.
But our new president mentioned the Indian community in his inauguration, right?
In the inauguration, I forgot who the gentleman was that was speaking.
Yeah.
It wasn't the president, but it was somebody
okay.
else. And he actually said Native people.
He
Love
did.
that.
Yeah. Native people. Yeah.
Cool.
I remember
And
that day. I noticed that day. Yeah.
Well, I was busy interviewing someone, and
Yeah.
you got to watch it. I didn't.
I know. I'm sorry.
It's all
Yeah.
right. You're the
Yeah.
boss.
So when you think about First Nations people, just do some research, or even go to a nation, talk to somebody, and we're not all those stereotypes.
Yeah, we're
Right.
curious.
Yeah, and from I don't even know what perspective this is, but I noticed that you don't refer to yourself as a Native American.
Well, I mean, it depends on who you speak to.
Uh-huh.
It could be Native American. It could be, Indigenous woman.
Okay.
I mean, I'm learning different things all the time about myself.
Yeah.
So basically, as
Yeah.
I guess I just look at myself as, a proud Native, well, you say Native American, but I just kind of look at myself as, a woman, Haudenosaunee, and basically, Ungwehu, that's how we say, and I just want to be proud of that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well,
And I want my girls to understand that they need to be proud of that. And like I said, I think my husband and I have done a good job. They're very strong women. There's been a lot of strong women in my family, and
Yes.
Regardless of all of the things that we went through, and
absolutely.
I just want to pass that on. And I have to say, my grandchildren are doing exceptional.
That's awesome.
That's amazing. Well,
Thank
again, you're an amazing woman.
You are. We have run over time, and we could talk for days with you. You're just really great to talk to, and thank you for doing this with us. This is really an important cause.
Thank you for having me.
Yep.
So, question, before we hop off here, how can someone reach you? Do you want to give us an email, a phone number, an address? How can someone?
And if someone wants to make a donation.
Yeah.
You could probably email us and email it to gathersober@gmail.com.
To gather.
I can't give you the number because we don't have the number there anymore.
Yeah.
But I still have the email on my computer.
Okay.
It's
Thank
Together
you.
basically,
sober.
it's basically handled by
Together.
me.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Yep.
Thank
So
you.
it's gathersober@gmail.com, because I'm the recovery coach. I was also the treasurer for the group.
Wonderful.
And you're on Facebook.
Yes.
And you're pretty active on it too, I noticed.
Yes. We also have Yukwatsistay. If you type in Yukwatsistay,
Yeah.
and I could tell you how to spell that if you needed to. But it's, our fire, our spirit within each one of us. And if you type that in, you should probably get to our page. And I usually, I think that's the other thing that has kept me going through all of this too. It's like for a while I kind of was off after my husband, but that's the important thing.
Yeah.
You got to stay connected. You got to keep busy. You got to
Yeah.
keep doing things when we go through these types of things. And that's
Mhm.
basically what has pulled me through. So I'm on there just about every day, putting some kind of comment or some kind of story or some kind of picture or something relating to let's stay in recovery, or if you need help.
Well, you're an inspiration. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for what you do every day for so many people. And it's great to meet you, and we hope to have another conversation.
That'd be awesome. And Dr. Flowers, if they
Okay.
want to reach you, how do they reach?
Go to our website, and it's jflowershealth.com.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a
Talk
great
to you
week.
soon.
All right.
All
Thank
the
you.
best.
Bye, Deborah.
All right. Bye-bye.